you want to be the kind of leader who can get the best out of each of their team members, it's easier than you think. Here's the number one strategy for getting the people on your team to perform at their best all the time. Tell them the story of a time when you saw them doing something excellent. Pick one moment. Even the smallest instance will work as long as you tell it in a way that clearly lays out what they did that was so great. Maybe it was an interaction with a customer that you overheard or saw from a distance, an interaction where they exhibited the values of the company or they were able to de-escalate a volatile exchange. Maybe they exhibited a particular leadership quality that is rare and valuable. Retell the story of that instance to them, either one-on-one or, to add some fuel to the fire, retell the story in front of their fellow teammates. And here's why this strategy is such an effective one. First, there's a chance they didn't even realize they did something great. Drawing their attention to it will encourage them to intentionally continue that behavior. Second, sharing the story in front of their teammates will draw attention to the behavior you want so others can follow suit. Third, by sharing the story, you will naturally spark the desire in the other team members to have a story told about them. Fourth, by sharing this in the form of a story versus a bullet point on a review, you increase the likelihood the moment will be remembered and therefore increase the likelihood that it will be repeated. And finally, most importantly, very rarely in life are we actually recognized in a meaningful way, especially as adults, for doing good work. And that simple moment of recognition can be the turning point in someone's career or at least their attitude and belief about themselves. A story that can quiet self-doubt, imposter syndrome, or more general versions of self-loathing that permeate individuals of all levels, backgrounds, and experience in organizations. Michael Lewis, famed author of nonfiction blockbusters like Moneyball, The Blind Side, The Big Short, discussed this phenomenon on his podcast, telling the story of a baseball coach who, after a particularly harrowing baseball game, pulled Lewis in front of his team and retold the story of how well Lewis played in one of the pinch essential moments of the game and why it was so remarkable. Lewis remarked that after hearing himself be described in such an inspirational and entirely new way, up until that point, Lewis had been lost, apathetic, a teenager, he was suddenly given a new story, a new narrative. And as a result, that one story became the beginning of a whole new identity. Lewis recalled that 4 years later, when the letter arrived saying he'd gotten into Princeton, he ran to the school to tell his coach, not to say, look what I did, but rather, look what you made possible for me to do. Now, it's probably likely that the people you're leading aren't 14-year-olds, fine, but their need and desire for new narratives to believe about themselves are no less pressing. You have the opportunity to shape someone's next professional chapter, unlocking and perpetuating the best they have to offer, simply by sharing one story about the greatness you've seen in them. Never underestimate the importance of that power.